Morgen. Yom Siyum Hatanya Erev Shabbos Kodesh Erev Shishon Lachsidus Yitas Kislev. So today Rambam we're into Hilchos Beit-Habechirah, and we're going to learn a couple of halachas in Perek Beis, and from there we will discuss the various halachas, the problems that's opposed from learning them, reading them, and see what kind of solutions exist. Starting with the first halacha in Perek Beis, halacha Aleph, very famous halacha. Mizbeach, Mizbeach, its place is very, very exact. Now again, the Rambam is not known for hyperbole, doesn't throw in words for no reason, but here, not only mechuvim, but b'yesem. You cannot change it from its place, ever. And he brings a pasuk for Zem Mizbeach Leil Yisrael, which is a pasuk that he mentioned period before in the beginning of Perek Aleph. Then he goes, then he starts telling us history. And this is really challenging because the Rambam is not a history sefer and clearly is not intended as history. And I think if I don't remember, I can't say I remember it, but it's rare. The only other time that there's a very long, there's a discussion of history, as we know, is Hilchos Avodah, where he goes into how Avodah came about. That also needs a beer, and the Rebbe speaks about it. There's a lot discussed on that. But here, for some reason, he gets into the history of where this Mizbeach came about. And the first thing he tells us, Uba Migdash Nekad Yitzchak Avinu. And he brings the pasuk for that, and so far. Okay, that's halacha Aleph. How comes halacha Beis? U'meseir is biyad hakoil. Whenever the Rambam says things like that, or the Gemara says things like that, and Chassidus says things that everybody knows, and then you don't know it. You feel like a fool. Meseir is biyad hakoil. Everybody knows this Messiah. Shamakim Shabbanim Veidav Shleima. Well, you know it only from the Rambam. Mizbeach v'dayin aravna hu amakim shabana by Avraham Mizbeach v'akadalav Yitzchak. Okay, so again, a lot of the diukim that I'm making are diukim that are found. The Rebbe talks about them, and the others talk about different of the diukim that we're going to talk about. I'm just going to compile them all into one. So here he again repeats the fact that Avraham built the Mizbeach there. But the Rebbe makes a deal that he leaves out over here the word Avinu. Before it was Yitzchak Avinu, and also the focus was on Yitzchak, here the focus on Avram, building the Mizbeach. Okay. Mizbeach shikar olav kain v'hevel, v'yikar adam arishin carbons, kishanivra, misham nivra. So what bothered me is that the Rambam has a Maimer Azal, and he has a Mesiris B'yad HaKoil. That's a Mesiris B'yad HaKoil. This is a Maimer Azal, clearly. Why does he leave that to the end? Okay. Another interesting thing is that in the order of his bringing it, he goes from front to back, beginning of the latter part of history, back to the beginning of history. Starts off with Avraham, back to Noach, back to Cain and Hevel, Adam Rishon, and then to creation. You should have gone the other way. This is where it was created. Then Adam brought the, and on all the different things. It's not a big aura, it's just an interesting point. Halacha Gimel. just to note, that Halacha Aleph and Beis is really dealt with at length by the Rebbe in the Sikha Chelik Lamed Zayin. We're going to touch on it. Those who learn it, but it's worth learning. It's an incredible Sikha. We're not here to go through the whole details, but the main point that he brings up. The Kuda of the Rebbe, just to note, and I'll say it now so we don't mix it with the rest. The Kuda of the Rebbe is that the Mizbeach has two inyan. There's the Mizbeach mitzad Mizbeach, and Mizbeach mitzad Mikdash. And the reason for that is simply because the whole Mikdash is there because of the Mizbeach, as the Rambam. Obviously, there's others who hold differently. The Rambam opinion is that the Mizbeach is the central point, focal point of the Beis Hamikdash. The reason we have Beis Hamikdash is the Akim Kabbanas. So Halacha Aleph is about the Beis Hamikdash. Mizbeach mitzad its relationship to the Beis Hamikdash, and that's miyuchet to the Yidden, and that's why he talks about only Nekad Yitzchak Avinu, and he talks about Avinu, and there he uses the word Uba Migdash Nekad. He don't talk about Mizbeach, Uba Migdash Nekad, even though he's bringing the Mizbeach Makayim Mechum B'Yis. And in Halacha Beis, the Rebbe says he is talking about the Mizbeach as it is on its own. And there he brings out the Milas of the Mizbeach. And the Rebbe says that what he's bringing out the Milas of the Mizbeach is that, first of all, it's not miyuchatiyah. The Mizbeach itself is not miyuchatiyah. It's for everybody. That's why. And Ulai, that's Shak Messiah's B'yad HaKol. Not Dafke Klali Shabbos. Everybody had that tradition. It's a tradition in history. And in addition to that, what he does is he first shows its uniqueness as a mukkah for Kabbanis. And then he goes at the end and shows, besides Kabbanis, there's also I love Adam Nivra Adam Mimakkah Kaparas in there. So that takes care of the first two halachas. Now I want to focus on the next two halachas, because they are equally difficult, different issues, but very, very difficult. Halacha Gimel, Midai Samizbeach, Mechuvanis Harbe. Again, hyperbole here. Very, not just Mechuvanis, but in measurements of Mechuvanis Harbe. And then Vitzurasa Yudua Ishmeish. Again, somehow people had traditions. It's known Ishmeish. Umizbeach Shabanu B'nei Hagoyla, Ken Mizbeach Shasu. Libanis Asu. Then he adds a line. The Ein Lahisiv Al Midasai. The Leila Gray. Can't add, can't change the measurement. This is the measurement. Okay. There are halachic issues. We did change the measurement, we made it bigger, but the general understanding is there's a minimum. But Ein Lahisiv. Halacha Daled Messiah. In the fourth halacha, he finishes up and he says, Shloisha Neviim Alu Imohem Minagoy. 3 Neviim went with them up from Galus, meaning from Babel. Echad Hein Lahem HaMakam HaMizbeach. One showed them where the Mizbeach is. Echad Hein Lahem HaMidesa. Echad Hein Lahem Shmakriven HaMizbeach. Hazeh Kol HaKavanaz HaVishem Shabbat. Okay, now, again, the Rambam is not known for just saying things because it's nice and it's interesting. Why does he need to tell us? Who cares? How they do it. They know it. Not lying, they do it. And before he said, Midas Mizbeach, Mukhavanis, Arbitz, Rossi, and Dua Ishmesh, we had a tradition. So now he comes, okay, they tell you that there's Nevi'im. Okay, so those are the issues that we're going to deal with on the second part. The first part, we took care of the Rebbe's Sikha, and again, I advise whoever has time to take a look at that Sikha in Chelik Lamed Zayin. I'm sorry, I think of that Chelik Lamed, Parshas Vayera, Sikha Beis. Okay, I'm still in a different Sikha. Okay. So, let's analyze and see how we understand these halachas. So we said that it's got to be exact, right? The midas hamizbeach have to be exact. Go a little further in our perik. Halacha Yitzayin. Again, this is a question that's asked a lot by a lot of people. Rambam Paskins arba kronoi shel mizbeach v'yisoidoi v'ribuoi ma'akir. So there are, listen to the Rambam, four corners, those things sticking out, kronos. The yisaid, which is around the mizbeach, its measurement being square, amak. Then, for some reason, he adds, "V'chol mizbeach she'en le'keren yisaid v'keves ribua arei apostle." You need a keves, you need a ramp. Sharboson ma'ak. Now, 3 words before that he left out keves, and then he added it in. Okay. I mean, he didn't talk about keves still earlier, but we'll get to that. Now comes the clincher. Midas arka, midas rachma, midas kemasai, ein mak. He just told me, ein misifin, ein megarin. You can't add, you can't subtract. Itamo, ein lahesiv, legreya. And here he tell you, no, it's not makil. As long as you're not, that's it. So what's going on here? Why there that he should make a blanket statement, and here he doesn't? Here he just throws it in. Here he says clearly it's not makil. The Gemara, that's an interesting piece of Gemara. The Rambam mentioned the fact that there were 3 Nevi'im that went up from Geilah. The Gemara now Samach Beis asks, how did they know where the Mizbeach goes? How do they know the place? The Gemara offers 3 things. Rabbi Lazar says they saw the Mizbeach built, and the Malach Michael Hasar Hagodol bringing Kabbalah there. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha says they saw Afrei Shel Yitzchak laying there. Obviously, it doesn't mean Yitzchak himself, or it means the aisle of Yitzchak, or somehow another. I would assume it's the aisle of Yitzchak. Shmuel Bar Achmeini says they knew where the Bakan Bais is. The Gemara says, and they smelled. Everywhere they went, they smelled a reich of Ketayus, because we know how powerful the reich of Ketayus was. But here they smelled the reich of Ivar. And right after that, the Gemara comes along, a separate statement, nothing to do with this. It's not part of this discussion. It doesn't say Rabbi Chanan Omar as a continuation. One said this, one said that, and there are 2 versions of what they said, but they definitely told you about the Malkam Mizbeach and Malkam and Malkam Mizbeach. So why doesn't the Rambam bring this? Why does the Rambam bring that he just goes straight to Rabbi Chanan? What about the other? Okay, so you can say that since it's a machlekes, it's a different opinions, so you didn't want to get them out. Okay. So that's one issue. Why didn't the Rambam mention anything? Okay. Also, what are you the Navi for? You have the other things that showed where the Makam Mizbeach is. Okay, so that is, you can answer. They only knew where to build, but the measurements. They knew the area, but they didn't know exactly how to put it and where to put it. The Brisker of Tzvachim there, it's brought down to Shmei, that he asks, once they knew where the Beis HaMikdash is, once they knew where the Beis HaMikdash, it says in the Gemara, why didn't they figure it out with the measurements? They can figure out, what do you mean this whole, we know that there's no nevuah and nisim and meisim b'kdi for no reason. So what do they need it for? So he says, we know that there's a shayla of efshel etzamtzum b'dei adam, the efshel etzamtzum b'dei adam. Since it's efshel etzamtzum b'dei adam, and since the midah of the Mizbeach has to be so exact, so, and that's the harbe that the Rambam stresses, and Mechum Yeser also, the exact. They need a Navi for them. So therefore it had to happen with a Navi. So now we have the problem. If we have to have a Navi, what do we need the other the other reason? So I was just thinking an interesting thought. We know that the that there's a shaila, and it's not. They're spoken about. They ask about it. That l'cheira, you're not allowed to rely on a navi mechadash anything. How do they learn from Rabbi? Ain't a navi shaila chadash. And then the people ask it. So I was thinking maybe that's why you needed the other things. The other things are not nevuah. It's a gilui, but it's just a real thing. They saw the real thing. They saw a malach being makir. They saw the afrish al yitzchak. They smelled the reyach ha'ivor. So it's not a problem of Torah L'Shamayim, and that's it. This is a real thing. I mean, the only thing is you needed exactness that you can rely on the Navi. Just a note, Chassam Sefer has a shitta, and it's a beautiful tshuva. And the Beis Hamikdash was set up l'chatchila as something that needs nevuah. As the pasuk says, "Hakal b'ksav miyada Shem alai," his skill. It's a place of nevuah. There's no other way to do Beis Hamikdash. And he says, "I made it correct." He says, "Where do you get it from?" Pasuk in Truma. It comes from me. So he says that this is a chiddush of the Mikdash. The Mikdash is a place that the Eibishter needs to intervene. There's a lot of depth in that, and there's a lot to be said about that. But the Nekuda, it's not the place now, but that's Mikdash. Mikdash requires a Gilui Lakus. It can't be without. So that'll answer our question, but maybe not. Because that's on the tavnus of the Mishkan, the tavnus of the Kalim. But it doesn't tell you the place. And that you need, that's not what that pasuk tells you. For the place, you have to come on to, you wouldn't be able to rely on the Navi unless you have some other way to know. Okay, let's go back to the finalize, as I don't want to schlep too long. That we had this interesting thing. And the Rambam mentioned the Kronos, and then he left out the Kevesh, the Kevesh, and he said, and then also in the beginning he writes Arba Kronos, then he says Chol Mizbeach Shein Keren. Well, obviously he's not referring to one Keren; it means all. And another issue, it seems that Kevesh is part of the Mizbeach, because that's Shein Kevesh. But before in Halacha Yud Gimel, he said the Kevesh are bundled with Grey Mishal Mizbeach. Okay, it's supposed to be a separate thing. And so too in Halacha Yud Dalet. He writes, Shnei Kvoshim Ktanim Yitzim Mimenu Shebehem. Finally, you say the L'Sevim Dolam and Mizbeach. So it doesn't sound like it's a chelik of Mizbeach. Another problem is the order of halachas. He starts off with Mizbeach, gets into Kevesh, and then goes back to the Mizbeach. Why? Why don't finish Mizbeach and then talk about the Kevesh? So there is what I'm saying now exists in different forms amongst people, but I think perhaps the Rambam and this part is said that the Rambam has an interesting lush, and we noted it. The tzurasa yidua ishmeish, Mizbeach, chuvanis harbe midais, and the tzurasa. So there seems to be two things. There is the midah, the measurement, and there's the tzura, the form, the gestalt of the Mizbeach. So even though the kevesh is a separate thing, it is part of the surah of the Mizbeach. And that's why he writes it in the middle, and that's why he brings it separately later. First, he says the three things you need as part of the Mizbeach. That's the Mizbeach. Then there is the kevesh, which is only chesh after the surah of the Mizbeach. In the surah of the Mizbeach, he's not talking about the kronos, he's talking about the Indian of Keren. Keren is part of the surah of the Mizbeach. That's why he stresses Keren, not kronos. We're not talking now about what the Mizbeach needs, it's what the Mizbeach, the seer of the Mizbeach, the form of the Mizbeach. And that's why Tzurasai Yedua Ish Ish. It doesn't say the Midah was Yedua Ish Ish. The Midah you needed the Viyam. The Midah you needed a Navi to come and tell you. The Tzura was Yedua. How is it? What's the look? So that's what he says. Since you learn, okay. So now we have one a little kuda to still deal with. He says, and then he says about the equal. I was thinking a very interesting thing. Where did we get the midah from the Navi? Since it's a Navi statement, you're not allowed to go, you're not allowed to change what the Navi tells you. That's a din in Hilchis Nevuah. And that's why Ein Lahesiv, Ein Lahegreya. But when we talk about the Ikuv of the Mizbeach, it's a Ma'akir. Avalin a Ma'akir. Okay, so, and that, but in the end, that's why he stresses the Harba and the Yoser. It's just how important it is. Because to show that this is the midah and the place. So in the end, what the answer of the Rambam in this part is that there's a concept of a tzura. The tzura includes the whole gestalt of a keren, of a yisaid, of a kevesh. That's the tzura of the Mizbeach. That's the way Mizbeach has to look. And yet there are other ways of saying this that others say. And again, there's nice approaches, but I just thought a simple way to explain it this way. Anyway, Agut Yar, Shana Teva, Bedanke Chassidus, and the Limud HaChassidus. Then it should be a gesund year for everybody in a year of Atzlocha, a year of Gilui. We should be able to see together, united with the Rebbe, and have the Sheyachs of King who come take us out of Malus. Like gesund, Atzlocha.